Earth had entered an era of unprecedented peace. Years of diplomatic efforts, groundbreaking technological advancements, and a collective push toward global unity had transformed the planet into a shining example of human potential. Nations cooperated seamlessly, boundaries between countries had all but dissolved, and conflict seemed like a distant memory. War, the scourge of history, had become nothing more than a relic of the past, a cautionary tale taught in schools rather than a living reality. But peace, as it often does, bred complacency. The world's sense of security was shattered without warning. It began as a strange disturbance on the airwaves. Faint at first, a flicker of static that disrupted the smooth hum of everyday communication. News stations scrambled to regain control as the signal spread. Then, an alien voice, a deep, guttural tone that dripped with malice, cut through every screen, every radio broadcast, and every communication channel on Earth. "People of Earth," the voice sneered, "your time has come." The broadcast was more than a message. It was an assault on the senses. Horrific images of conquered worlds filled the screens. Burning cities, torn landscapes, and the brutalized forms of species crushed under the Xynar Collective's iron fist. The scenes shifted to broken cities and crumbling civilizations, all accompanied by a sinister orchestral hum that made the blood freeze. The leader of the Xynar Collective, a towering creature named Varkith, appeared on screen, his eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity. "We are the Xynar," he said with cruel certainty, "and you will bow before us. We have wiped entire civilizations from existence. We will do the same to yours." The broadcast ended with a chilling ultimatum. Earth had 48 hours to surrender, or the Xynar would annihilate them all. Panic swept across the globe. Governments scrambled for answers. Military forces went into high alert, and civilians fled into shelters. Earth's moment of peace had been shattered, not by internal conflict, but by an external force so advanced that humanity's finest military assets seemed like toys by comparison. In the midst of this chaos, the UN Military Council was hastily convened. They needed a solution, and they needed it fast. Earth's conventional forces stood little chance against the Xynar's vast fleets. The Xynar's warships, with their impenetrable energy shields and devastating plasma weapons, tore through Earth's defenses like paper. Major cities fell within hours, their skyline reduced to ashes in a matter of minutes. Captain Marcus Kane, a former Marine turned civilian security consultant, stood in a cramped operations room, staring at a map of Earth's global defense systems. He had seen this kind of devastation before, though never on this scale. His eyes, once sharp with determination, were now clouded with disillusionment. Humanity, he thought bitterly, had grown too soft. They had forgotten what it meant to fight. The world's peace had made them weak. But Kane's cynicism masked a deeper truth. He was terrified. For all his bravado, there was no plan to win. Nothing conventional would stop the Xynar. Across the room, Dr. Sofia Alvarez, a brilliant NASA engineer, adjusted the settings on her tablet, her mind already working through the chaos. Alvarez wasn't the type to succumb to fear. Her expertise in adaptive AI and drone technologies had made her one of the world's foremost scientists. She believed in the potential of humanity, if they could just find a way to leverage their ingenuity. "I think I've found something," Alvarez said, her voice calm, though her eyes betrayed the urgency of the situation. She tapped on the screen. "The Xynar warships. There's something in their shield design. It's not invulnerable, just highly resistant to certain frequencies. We can exploit that." Her discovery gave the group a sliver of hope, but it also revealed just how far behind Earth had fallen technologically. They had no weapon capable of exploiting the flaw yet. "We can't build something in time," Kane said flatly, his gaze fixed on the flickering holographic map. "Not in 48 hours. Sergeant Deshaun Diesel Carter, a combat veteran with the Army Rangers, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his jaw set in determination. Carter wasn't a strategist, but he knew how to survive. And survival was the only thing that mattered now. "We've got 2 days, right?" he said, his voice steady. That's enough time if we get creative. I've fought against odds before. The trick is improvising. Kane glanced over at Carter, his expression hard. Improvising won't save us. The Xynar are too advanced. They could wipe us out before we even get close. I'm not talking about fighting them head-on. Carter shot back, eyes glinting with quiet resolve. I'm talking about outsmarting them. You've got your brains. He nodded at Alvarez. I've got mine. We work together. We make this work. Ellie Monroe, a young hacker from Silicon Valley, stood at the back of the room watching the heated exchange. Her fingers drummed impatiently against her tablet. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, she interjected. We just need to find something they didn't expect. The group turned their attention to Monroe, the rebellious genius who'd made a name for herself by cracking the most secure systems in the world. Her unconventional methods were often dismissed by her peers, but in this moment, her presence felt like a lifeline. We've got data from Xynar Tech, she said, tapping away at her tablet. I can dig through it. If there's a vulnerability, I'll find it. Lieutenant Andrea Collins, an Air Force pilot known for her precise and innovative tactics, stepped forward. We'll need more than just tech to fight this. We'll need to strike from the air, hit them fast and hard. I've got a few ideas on how to take down their air defenses, but we'll need the tech to back it up. The tension in the room was palpable. Earth had 48 hours. Every second counted. There was no room for error. As the team came together, each with their own set of skills, their own desperate drive to protect their home, they realized that the only way to win was to adapt. The Xynar had underestimated them. They had underestimated humanity's ability to innovate, to improvise, and to fight when it mattered most. Together, they would make their stand. The underground facility beneath Washington, D.C., was a symbol of humanity's last-ditch effort to survive. What was once a symbol of peace and diplomacy had become a bastion of desperation and ingenuity. Within its walls, the remnants of Earth's military command and the world's brightest minds worked tirelessly to turn the tide against the Xynar. The team gathered around a large table, where the remains of a Xynar drone were laid out in pieces, its dark, jagged form like something out of a nightmare. Dr. Sophia Alvarez stood over the wreckage, meticulously examining the alien technology. The creature's materials were unlike anything Earth had ever seen, light yet durable, and seemingly impervious to conventional weapons. The drone's neural core, a small, pulsating node of alien energy, was the key. This is it, Alvarez muttered, tapping away at her tablet, her fingers swift. I can rewire this, repurpose its components. We can use this for the EMP disruptor. Ellie Monroe, seated at a corner table, leaned forward, her eyes scanning the flickering screen of her own device. She was hunched over a series of encrypted files she'd managed to decrypt from the drone's neural core. The data wasn't just about weapons or technology. It was a detailed map of the Xynar fleet's command network. She grinned, eyes twinkling with the kind of mischievous energy that only a hacker could possess. Found it, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. Blueprints for their whole fleet. I can get us in, but we'll need to be smart. Captain Marcus Kane crossed his arms, eyeing the pieces of alien tech warily. His mind was already on the battlefield, calculating the potential of what they had before them. We don't have time to waste. We need something that works, fast. Sergeant Deshaun Diesel, Carter was already on his feet, examining the drone's weaponry. We've got no choice but to make it work, he said, his voice calm but firm. We're going to have to test this on the field. No lab will tell us what it can really do. Within hours, they had a prototype, a crude but functional EMP disruptor. It was an imperfect device, built from scavenged Xynar tech, Earth's limited resources, and the team's sheer determination. The disruptor was a gamble. It was designed to emit an electromagnetic pulse at a specific frequency that would, theoretically, exploit a vulnerability in the Xynar's energy shields. It was a long shot, but it was the best shot they had. The testing ground was in Arizona, a barren stretch of desert where the Xynar's ground forces had been seen. The team moved quickly, setting up their small but carefully coordinated attack. As the Zynar scouts approached, the team positioned the EMP disruptor in an abandoned mining tunnel. Ellie's fingers flew across her tablet, syncing the disruptor with their mobile command unit. Kane, Carter, and Lieutenant Andrea Collins were in place, ready to execute their strike. The Zynar scouts appeared on the horizon, massive, metallic shapes looming like specters against the blood-red sky. Everyone in position, Kane barked into his comms. "This is it." The EMP disruptor hummed to life, and for a moment, there was silence. Then a sharp pulse of energy rang out, sending waves across the desert. A loud crack filled the air as one of the Zynar craft screeched to a halt, its shield flickering violently before collapsing. The ship plummeted to the ground in a fiery wreck. For a brief moment, the team's celebration was cut short. The EMP had worked, but the cost was high. The disruptor had overloaded, sending shockwaves that damaged the surrounding terrain and caused collateral damage to their own forces. "Damn it, it's not perfect," Alvarez muttered, looking at her tablet in frustration. "We're going to need to stabilize the power feed, or the next test could blow up in our faces." "Can we fix it in time?" Monroe asked, her eyes never leaving the screen, hands already typing furiously. "We don't have time to fix it," Carter said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "The Zynar won't give us a second chance. We need to adapt fast." The team returned to base, nursing bruises from their first true field test. Despite the victory, it was clear that Earth's forces weren't quite ready for the Zynar's full might. Kane, who had seen more than his fair share of combat, knew the situation was dire. "We can't just rely on gadgets," he said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "We need to be unpredictable. Guerrilla tactics. We hit them where they don't expect it." Carter nodded, his mind already working on the next step. "You're right. We need to use the terrain, the weather, anything. The Zynar think they can stomp all over us, but they're not prepared for what we can do when we're cornered." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Collins was already analyzing aerial data. "We've been fighting them head-on, but their targeting systems aren't flawless. There's a blind spot in their defense grid. If I can get one of our pilots in there and exploit it, we might just be able to do some damage." Kane's mind was racing. The team was beginning to piece together a strategy, but there was a key piece they were still missing: how to attack the Zynar command structure itself. Without disabling the fleet's flagship, they were just making small dents in an impenetrable force. That night, as the team regrouped, Ellie Monroe's hacking skills led them to a breakthrough. She had been digging through Zynar communications and managed to intercept a transmission from a captured officer. "We've got something," she said, her voice almost reverent as she decoded the data. "This officer's hierarchy report, it's detailed. The fleet's command system, the flagship, it's all there. We now know exactly how they coordinate, and I think we've found their weak link." The team leaned in, and for the first time in days, a glimmer of hope flickered in their eyes. The flagship, the Zynar's nerve center, was not invulnerable. If they could disable it, the entire fleet could be thrown into chaos. Kane's lips curled into a grim smile. "All right, people, this is it. We've got a target. We take that flagship down, and we end this war." Humanity's first unified strike was on the horizon, one last desperate gambit. The Zynar had awakened something in humanity: the will to fight, the drive to adapt, and the dark, primal wrath that had once made them conquerors of their own world. Now, it would be used to drive back an alien empire that had underestimated them. The plan was set into motion with a precision that only humanity's finest could achieve. The EMP disruptors, refined by Dr. Alvarez and Monroe, were the linchpins of Earth's counteroffensive. These devices, born of desperation and ingenuity, would be deployed in a coordinated strike across the globe, targeting Zynar ground bases and their orbital fleet. Lieutenant Andrea Collins took the lead in the skies. A veteran pilot with nerves of steel, she had helped design the retrofitted fighter jets armed with experimental EMP missiles. These missiles were specially engineered to disrupt Zynar shields at close range, a risky but necessary maneuver to expose their vulnerabilities. As Collins and her squadron of pilots took to the air, the roar of their engines was the sound of defiance. "Remember, stay tight and stay fast," Collins barked over the comms. "We only get one shot at this." On the ground, Captain Kane and Sergeant Carter prepared their team for the most dangerous mission yet, sabotaging Zynar supply lines. These lines were the arteries that fed the alien war machine, and cutting them off would starve the Zynar of resources and reinforcements. Armed with improvised explosives and a cache of Earth's remaining military hardware, they moved swiftly through the wreckage of abandoned cities, using advanced tactics honed through years of combat experience. They struck without warning, their movements a blur of calculated chaos. "We hit hard, and we disappear," Kane ordered, his eyes scanning the horizon for Zynar patrols. Carter, ever the pragmatist, nodded without a word, already moving to the next objective. They were a well-oiled machine, driven by the will to survive. The flagship assault, however, would be the heart of the mission. It was the Zynar's command center, their symbol of dominance in the sky, and taking it down was the only way to ensure Earth's victory. Collins and her squadron led the charge, tearing through the enemy's fighter craft in a breathtaking aerial dogfight. Zynar's ships exploded in flashes of fire and debris, but their numbers were overwhelming. The stakes were high, and every move counted. "Keep them off our 6, Collins commanded, maneuvering her jet with flawless precision. The EMP missiles were their only hope. They had to hit their targets fast or risk losing the advantage. As her squadron weaved through the battlefield, they created an opening, an opportunity for the ground team to infiltrate the flagship. Inside the flagship, Kane, Carter, and Monroe fought their way through tight alien corridors, avoiding traps and engaging hostile forces at every turn. The alien ship was a labyrinth of dark metal and strange, pulsating lights, its walls seemingly alive with an otherworldly energy. Carter, with his unflinching focus and military instincts, led the charge. Every step was calculated, every move designed to survive the Zynar's deadly traps. Monroe, on the other hand, was already hacking into the alien systems, her fingers flying across her tablet as she disabled security protocols and locked doors. The Zynar had no idea what they were up against. Ellie Monroe was a force of nature when it came to breaking into systems, and she was determined to see this through. "Got it." Monroe's voice crackled through the comms. "I'm in. You guys are clear for the next corridor." But there was a hitch. Dr. Alvarez, working remotely, had guided them every step of the way. But as they approached the flagship's core, something went wrong. The EMP disruptor was supposed to take out the flagship's power core, disabling the ship and crippling the Zynar fleet. But as they activated the device, it faltered, sparking erratically. Interference from Zynar technology had thrown off the disruptor's calibration. "We've got a problem," Alvarez said, her voice tight with frustration. "The disruptor's malfunctioning. It's not going to work unless you can fix it." Monroe's mind raced. She had no choice. She had to improvise. Without hesitation, she began dismantling parts of her own gear, wiring components together with a speed that only someone like her could manage. The stakes were too high for anything less than perfection. "Hold them off," Monroe shouted to Kane and Carter. "I've got a solution, but I need 5 minutes." Kane's eyes darkened with resolve. "Do it. We've got you covered." With the Zynar closing in, Carter and Kane took up defensive positions, their weapons blazing as they fought to keep the alien forces at bay. Each wave of Zynar soldiers came harder, faster, and with a brutal ferocity that was starting to wear them down. But they fought on, not just for survival, but for the future of humanity. Monroe's hands worked like a blur, and after what felt like an eternity, she fixed the disruptor. She slammed the final component into place, her face grim with concentration. "It's ready," she breathed, hitting the activation button. A pulse of energy shot through the flagship, and the entire ship trembled. The lights flickered, and a deafening hum filled the air as the disruptor sent out a wave of electromagnetic energy. The flagship systems began to shut down, their power grid flickering out like a dying star. Collins, still engaged in the dogfight above, saw the opening. "Now!" she shouted into her comms. With perfect precision, Collins fired a missile from her jet, the EMP detonation sending shockwaves through the flagship's core. The explosion tore through the ship, the once imposing structure now reduced to a lifeless hulk drifting through space. The Xynar fleet, leaderless and disoriented, began to retreat in disarray. Earth's forces pressed forward, driving them out of the atmosphere and into the far reaches of space. Back on Earth, as the smoke cleared and the dust settled, humanity stood victorious, albeit battered and broken. The cities lay in ruins, the world forever scarred by the war, but Earth had survived. The Xynar had thought they could break humanity with their overwhelming force, but they had underestimated something they couldn't comprehend: the will to survive, the strength of unity, and the fury that came when humanity was backed into a corner. In a moment of triumph, Kane stood before a global audience, his voice steady but laced with quiet fury. "You came to break us," he said, his gaze burning with intensity. "All you did was unite us. Come again, and you'll see what happens when humanity's fury is truly unleashed." The message was clear. Earth would not be defeated. The galaxy had seen humanity at its most desperate, but now it had seen humanity's full power. The Xynar had awakened a wrath that no one could have anticipated, and if any other threat dared to challenge Earth again, they would learn that humanity's fury was a force unlike any other.